pleasure now to introduce Kobina and XR Being the Change.
Greetings, everyone. So, my name is Kobina and representing the XR Being the Change Affinity network, which you may or may not have heard about, but as part of the fact that XR represents many different tendencies, and we're glad to call XR home as an umbrella under which many of us have found a movement in which we can share ideas, we can disagree, but we can disagree knowing that our targets and our challenge is the same thing. We're all here today because we believe in a rebellion against extinction. Many of us know that rebellion under many different types of names, under very many different types of ideologies. There are very many different reasons that we are all here today. And the Being the Change Affinity network, which was launched last year, has been set up with the priority of focusing on the work of supporting colonized communities. Because we understand, in fact we overstand, that this rebellion is never going to be won on the streets of London. Unfortunately, we have to accept that, and we have to get a move on with understanding that. When the masses of our people around the world take back their lands, shut down the crime scenes which have been exported there, tell their governments to get rid of their violent governments, then we know that it's at that point when the streets of London and the United Kingdom will feel the power of the united peoples of the world struggling for their liberation. That is a long way. That reality is a long way away from where Extinction Rebellion started. That's the truth. The understanding of the colonialism that we are all confronted with has now come to the forefront. As a couple speakers before us have said, we now are using the word openly around reparations. But what does reparations mean? Because to some of us who support the International Social Movement for African Reparations, who are represented within the Being the Change Affinity network, we don't understand this language of climate reparations. You cannot repair the climate out there. You can have reparations only when you secure the total sovereignty of your peoples, when we take back our lands and we shut down these climate criminals and these criminals who have been forcing all types of harms and violences around the world for hundreds and hundreds of years. Now that's a different type of rebellion to simply just coming onto the streets and protesting. Because we cannot protest against the system which has already told us that it's hell-bent on killing us. That system is the issue. Back in 2020, we were part of a campaign called the Global Majority Versus campaign, which took the UK government to court for its violations of human rights around the world. In 2021, the UK government responded by saying that any violations of your rights would be reasonably and objectively justified. Violations of the masses of people's rights around the world are reasonably and objectively justified by not only this fascist government, but its whole entire establishment. Colonized peoples of the world know that fact. The question is, when we talk about telling the truth, will we in a movement in the global north, in the UK, recognize that fact? That this establishment is done out, that it doesn't represent your interests. And the starting point with some of that work is to move away from calling these governments our governments, because they are not our governments. These governments were forced upon you when they came and took your lands, and then when they got bored of extracting lands in the UK, they went around the world to kill and massacre millions and billions of people around the world. And they're still doing it. So any rebellion against extinction has to start with that truth. A truth which the majority of the world already know, and already, because of the conditions of the reality they live in, are forced and compelled into active rebellion and resistance every day. And so there's centuries of knowledge of freedom fighting that communities hold, that is being passed on intergenerationally, being protected and defended by indigenous communities, by colonized communities. And our starting point with the Being the Change Affinity Network is saying that it's those change-making communities who have a lot to teach and share with us here to build the types of tactics to build a strong global power that will compel this system to wake up. And we know that that is happening, whether our movements recognize it or not. Because this government shifts to fascism to call out all peoples and choose certain type of peoples and make those people the scapegoats for its own criminalities is precisely because the rest of the world has largely woken up. They're giving up on the dollar. They're giving up on this false idea of debt, which they refuse to pay and they refuse to say is theirs. And they want their lands back, and they're going to take them back, whether the movements in the global north care or don't care. So the challenge that the Being the Change Affinity Network has been working around is to be, how do we make ourselves relevant to the masses of people who are doing what we simply cannot do? How do we make that part of our education system? Because 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, our young people are going into schools and being taught lies upon lies upon lies. Not just from history, but to geography, to science, to being told about the system that is not even going to exist for them in 5, 10, 15 years. So our starting point has been focusing on what we call an educational revolution. Because it is only when we have a revolution in how we think about how the world works, a revolution in understanding that education is about serving our communities, it's about building power, it's about taking our communities back, that we will have the infrastructure that will help us create the struggle and facilitate the struggle that is being waged all around the world. The push of that work has really been behind the flagship project of BCAN, which is the Planet Repairs Action Learning Educational Revolution, or PRALER. And the slow, painstaking work has to take our work of movement building seriously. Not turning up at whatever time, but to form the types of cadres within our communities who can reorganize and share the truth of what's happening elsewhere in the world, so that when they touch one in Vietnam, when they touch two in any parts of Africa or Abyella, then they touch all of us. And when we get that type of unity, where we feel the pain of our siblings in other parts of the world, we will stop the talk and we will get involved in the types of actions that matter to the vast majority of the world. Now, I'm not here to take a supercharged statement about going to block roads and all the rest of it. That's not what this translates into. Because the vast majority of the world are simply asking people here to listen, pay attention, and amplify the real resistance, the struggles, the formations, the communities that are out there doing the work. Shutting down oil companies, shutting down mining companies. This stuff is happening every day. So what if the money and resources we put on to taking up to the streets of London was put in to resourcing communities to stop the crime at its root? Because the vast majority of oil being extracted is not being extracted in the global north. It's not being extracted in the UK. The resources, the food items on the shelves of supermarkets in the United Kingdom, where did they come from? Who are the communities that are farming these foods? That's the type of responsible citizenship that should be being educated to every school child in this country. That type of education would completely change the world tomorrow. But we have to fight for it. And we have to get this information into our communities, and we have to start telling the we have to start telling the truth. So the work of BCAN continues. The work continues in invitations where we're inviting people to come and learn more about that work at any one of our bases, including at the GOPIS in London. You can also follow information on working closely with the International Solidarity Network, which since the beginning of XR has been championing the work of focusing on the colonized communities who are leading the struggle. And you can also follow more at PRALER_news, because it's going to take all of you in your communities connecting your struggles up so that we don't demand the system to change, we build the new system ourselves. With our own hands, with our own time, with our own love, with our own music, with our own songs. And bringing all the rich traditions that you all have but have been denied to you in the same miseducation system, which taught us that, you know, Britain gave democracy to the world. And we here who stand here today should make sure that when we're here calling out this system, we're saying that because we're trying to make the message to everyone around the world that even we from here know this system is rotten. So they better get on with defending theirs and teaching us a thing or two about the types of worlds we can build. Lastly is the dates that BCAN has continued to champion supporting. And throughout the course of the year, these dates have been taken on the initiative of colonised communities around the world. And the very next one is April the 30th. April the 30th commemorates April the 30th, 1975, when the Vietnamese people sent the United States packing with the international solidarity power of millions of people around the world saying no more foreign interventions, no more military occupation of our lands. And when we're talking about stopping extractivism, stopping climate finance, why the hell are we not talking about the US military-industrial complex, which is the single biggest carbon emitter in the entire world? Why are we not talking about getting AFRICOM out of Africa? The United States has more than 30 military bases occupying our people's lands to this day. What type of environmental movement ignores that fact? What type of environmental movement are we building? These are the truths that have to be reconciled with, and these are the truths that we have to tell. Because if we don't build our movements on truth, we will live a future of lies, and that is what we'll be giving to the next generation. So you can join us in International Solidarity on April the 29th, where we'll be holding a Peace Lotus commemoration around the UK, where PRALER co-sags in Stroud, Bristol, Leeds, Edinburgh, London, and if you want to hold your own, you can get involved too. But we will be in Windrush Square in Brixton, holding that space as a day to commemorate how peoples around the world came together in those moments to secure real wins. And when we unify that power, there is absolutely no reason why we will lose. So let's start talking about winning this rebellion.
Thank you to BCAN. Are you ready to be the change?